It's just loading up. So thank you very much, everybody. It's wonderful to have so many people to speak to about our new process. So this is our agenda for what we're going to talk about today. We've got quite a lot to cover, and as Anthea and Polly mentioned, we're aiming to answer all of the submitted questions. But if we don't get to them, we'll share the answers after the presentation. And this is being recorded, and a copy will be available on our website. Following, again, Anthea and Polly's introduction, we wanted to share a little bit more about our area of work. I'm Danny, one of the managers in casework assessment and triage, and we look at the cases that have completed the landlord's complaints process to identify if the case is within our jurisdiction, and if it is, what is the most appropriate intervention for us to have. We also request all of the information that we need to look at the case from landlords, carry out early resolution activities like mediation, and do all of the administration around the details that you provide. I'll hand over to Sarah initially for a bit about her role.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name's Sarah Jarrett, and I'm the triage lead within the Ombudsman's triage and mediation team. My role is to support our dispute examiners and the dispute resolution support officers within the team in the work that they do. And I also provide support to the triage management team, lead on any improvement activities which have been identified in any sort of process reviews, as well as a little bit of casework assessment as part of the dispute examiner role. So you might see a few things coming through from me as well. But I'll hand over to Hannah, one of our dispute examiners.
Morning, everyone. My name is Hannah Baptiste. I'm one of the dispute examiners in Danny's team. So my role is to assess whether a case is within our jurisdiction in line with the scheme, and then to look at the best way forward, so whether that's mediation or investigation, and then to communicate with landlords and residents, send evidence requests and mediation proposals. And I will now hand over to Kayla.
Good morning, everyone. So my name's Kayla Rayner, and I am a dispute resolution support officer. A lot of you have probably seen my name dotted at the end of sorts of notices and things like that, because what we do as dispute resolution support officers is check in the evidence that we receive and request any further evidence or further clarification if we need to. We also are the team that progress the cases on to the pool, so that the investigators and adjudicators are able to then get their cases. So I'll hand back over to Danny to do the presentation.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. So to give you a bit of background to the changes that we've made, demand for our service has continued to grow, and we are still experiencing a significant increase in contact. Now, our insight and performance colleagues are working on the annual report, which will give the specific figures. But comparing 22-23 to 23-24, we're looking at approximately at this stage a 27% increase in inquiries to our service, and cases coming to us for formal investigation increased by around 60%. Now, if you've seen our business plan for this year, you might have noticed that we've got a key performance indicator in there to determine 1,400 more cases this year than we did in 23-24. So in short, similar to the increases in complaints that yourselves as landlords are experiencing across the sector, we're expecting demand to continue, and we've recognised that we needed to adjust our approach. And to support this, we had feedback from colleagues, landlords and residents that was telling us we needed to do things a little differently. On the slide here, I've picked out the main factors in our decision making, but ultimately we knew that we needed to make the process more efficient from our perspective, and of course for yourselves as landlords too. And at the heart of the changes in anything we do at the Ombudsman service, we really want to improve the customer experience and ensure that any changes support us in achieving our vision and organisational objectives. There's a lot of information on here, but as I said, it will be available to review afterwards. And there are some key changes to the process outlined on this slide, which create a more streamlined experience for landlords and our colleagues, and will help us achieve more timely determinations. And to pick out the most significant changes, we're now telling landlords when we've designated a case high risk, which means that you're able to identify cases easier where the issues might need revisiting before you hear from us with our formal decision. And for most cases, we've reduced the specific queries that we're asking at the assessment stage, our stage of the process. Now, every complaint is unique, so there will be occasions where we need to ask for different bits of information at the assessment area, and that is very much in line with the inquisitorial approach that we take to all complaints. But for the main impact is that for the majority of cases, you'll receive standard information requests. And for all returns, whether they are bespoke or standard, you'll need to complete a checklist to help us make sure that we have everything we need. And there is more on that coming up. So the detail we need from you as landlords has not changed. We still need timely, specific information relevant to the complaint that we've defined and that you've already investigated. By completing the checklist document and labelling files appropriately, you reduce queries to your teams, help us check in the information faster, and allow us to progress cases more quickly, which in turn lets us deliver an outcome to the person who's brought the complaint to the Ombudsman sooner. And that is key. When we were considering the changes, we had the resident and landlord experiences as our focal points, really. Formatting of documents, that is very important. We need you to make sure that we can easily access the information you've provided. So please check for things like emails having single line formatting, which if you're not aware, it's where all the text suddenly decides to appear in one very big long line that nobody can read. And if you do things like that, checking for issues like that, it makes sure that we're only coming back to you when we need to with queries, when it's absolutely essential. And by following our new process, you really do make a difference to how we manage our casework. Now, this is a very deconstructed example of what you'll receive. Our information request will look like this, but obviously on a nice A4 page instead of spread out across a PowerPoint slide. So there is a section that you need to complete with a Y or N to say whether you've been able to provide the document. And in the info location section, a box where you can enter the details of the file name. And I want to mention something important here. If we ask you for a document on the checklist and you don't have it, please explain why you're not providing it. And then that information can be considered during the investigation by our dispute resolution team. Just going to grab a sip of my drink. Will be a moment. So some of you on this webinar might be portal users, and that means that you communicate with us using our online system, which gives you greater visibility around the cases that we're assessing. And this process is compatible with the portal. And while we're on the subject, thank you very much to all of the landlords who completed our portal feedback survey earlier this year. We received some fantastic insights that we're currently reviewing, and we'll let users know when we have an update on sort of the actions linked to those. And if anyone would like more details about the portal, whether you're a user or not, our website has a dedicated page with a video tutorial and a user guide that explains how to use the system effectively. And we're also working with our colleagues in the Centre for Learning team to develop a micro-learning course to further support landlords with using the portal system. And if you return information to us by email, it's very important to reply directly to the message that we send without changing the subject line. And the reason for this is that our emails contain a unique code which links the information directly to the case on our casework management software. And all of this information that I'm delivering and all of this information that I'm talking about, we have some guidance to support landlords through it all, which is again on our website, and it outlines our expectations in detail. Moving on to timescales for providing information to us, that hasn't changed, and we continue to have an escalation process for chasing the information that we don't receive by the deadline that we've communicated. So when we send a request to you initially, you have a 3-week deadline. And I want to highlight the importance of adhering to our timescales. And I want to touch briefly on our statutory complaint handling code as well. We've outlined our complaint handling staff expectations there, which would in turn support this activity within section 4. And We do recognise that there will be exceptional circumstances where a landlord is unable to meet the timescale that we specify. And if that happens, we need you to tell us as quickly as possible with details about the barrier so that we can consider the best way forward. We do grant extensions to information requests. However, we'll do this only once during the process, and it is unlikely to be for longer than 1 week. After we've followed the process outlined on the slide to chase the information, if we still have no response from a landlord, we will issue a Type 2 Complaint Handling Failure Order, or CHFO for short. And this means that the case will progress based on the information we have, because it's important that the person who's brought the complaint to us isn't disadvantaged by any delays in the evidence gathering space. And again, you can find out more details about CHFOs in the landlord area of our website. Now, thinking about sort of next steps and feedback, we are very much a value-driven learning organisation, and we are always open to hearing landlord views. Since we started the new process, which was the 7th of May, we had some initial feedback from landlords about a consistent referencing format, which we've adopted. And we do want to acknowledge as well that at the moment, you'll be managing some cases which are in our original, where you've had an evidence request that's in our original format. You'll have some cases that you received where the evidence requested was in the sort of interim format without the consistent referencing, and you'll have some that are in the format that I've shown, which have that consistent referencing there for the documents that we're requesting. And what I've shown and discussed will be what you receive from now on, and we'll let you know if we, via our newsletter or website, if we change anything else significant. And as usual, if you have specific queries about a case, about the detail of a case, then please continue to communicate with the caseworker or team via portal message or email to the casework inbox. But if you have feedback on our process, you can email the details to our portal mailbox, and the address is shown above. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found that useful. And we'll now hear from Sarah, Hannah and Kayla to answer the pre-submitted questions, followed by any further questions if we have time. Thank you.
Brilliant. So the first question that we received said, following a notification of a new complaint, the portal case often takes a while longer to appear. The delay reduces the available time for the landlord to submit information, meaning it has to be sent by multiple emails, which is less secure. Please can the Ombudsman confirm that it is aware of the delays and provide an update? POS rarely replies to emails sent to its casework address, and I have used this address to seek guidance on a complex case or to share information. Please can you confirm which is the best address or team to contact if advice or support is needed to ensure that a response is received? And I'll hand over to Hannah to respond.
Yeah, we're not aware of a delay in the portal cases taking longer to appear. If we send a message to the landlord via the portal, then it should be visible to the landlord, or the case should be visible to the landlord straight away. So it might be that we need to contact the landlord that submitted this question separately just to find out what's going on and if there's any issues that we need to look at. In terms of the second part of the question, the casework email address, that is the correct email address to be using. As we've said, we have seen a significant increase in demand, and we recognise this, and so we've increased our team numbers so that we can respond to this increase. So you should see an improvement in this. In terms of providing additional information, we'd recommend that you provide the information that you can send, and use the checklist to tell us if there's any information that you can't send and why, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So I hope that answers the question. If we've misunderstood the first part of the question about the delays, just let us know and we'll provide a further response to that. So the next question we received is, when submitting the evidence, we usually send a covering letter that focuses on the area that the resident has said are still outstanding, and then we attach an appendix, which is much the same format as you are now requesting. Should we continue to provide a covering letter, or will the adjudicator just rely on the evidence provided and the complaint summary? I will hand over to Sarah, please, to answer that question.
Of course, thank you. So what we do ask is that landlords just provide what is requested only, as obviously as a minimum. However, if there's anything further that would be of use to us or the investigator investigating the case, then please feel free to send this in. You can always label this as additional information on the checklist provided. That's really useful in some cases. So the next question from a pre-submitted question is, please can you advise, while we are still getting emails for a request for evidence, rather than this being requested via the portal, some of the cases have a lot of attachments and it's time consuming having to split up the evidence to send by a number of separate emails. So I'll pass over to Hannah. Response to this one.
Sarah, yeah, I think we've had this question submitted a few times by different people from the same landlord, so hopefully we'll answer all of the questions with this response. Sorry, bear with me a second. So if you come across any cases coming to you by email that should be on the portal, then just let us know. Just email the portal mailbox and someone in the portal team can support you. It might be that we need to activate the case on the system. So you should be getting portal messages rather than the emails, so just let us know if that's not the case. The next question. Do you want as much to be on the form, or is it okay to do a supporting document with all the information on and refer to this as the location? I've done a bit of both, so not sure the best way to do them, which makes it easier. And Kayla, if you could answer that one, please.
Absolutely. So you can use the checklist form to provide short explanations. However, the landlord should be providing information separately, and the files should be provided via email or via the portal. So that means that the form should actually be used as a reference cover sheet. So where it says I believe, file location, that's where you tell us exactly where we're able to pinpoint the information needed. We're also introducing the referencing format, which should help as well. So on to the next question, and that is, when the Ombudsman are dealing with a case and make internal changes on the portal, we receive an update email. Is there anything that you can do about this? And I'll over to Sarah to respond, please.
Thank you, Kayla. So yes, we're aware of an issue here. So we have responded to the feedback from the landlord survey, which Danny mentioned previously. Thank you for those that are on the portal for responding to that. And we can confirm it's something that we are removing. So we don't have a timescale at this point, but you will be updated when we have more information for you on that. So hopefully that answers that question for everybody. The next question we've received, which I think is the last one we're going to go through in the pre-submitted questions. So we recently requested an extension due to a particularly difficult case, which involved a number of customers. We asked for an additional 3 weeks, but this was refused and we were only granted 1 week. Previously, we have requested this and it was granted. On occasion, due to high volumes of cases or staffing issues or particularly complex and difficult cases, we may need to request extensions. And what are the parameters for these being accepted? So I'll pass this over to Kayla to respond.
Yes, so our Knowledge and Information Management Report, KIM for short, did highlight some really good benefits for both the landlords and the residents, and these are aimed at increasing the trust and helping that relationship between the landlords and residents. As always, we will consider specific details when it comes to extensions, and at times they may be granted and others they may not. We also consider the resident circumstances in this. So of course, as Danny highlighted earlier, things like high risk cases is something that we would look into too. We can't comment on specific cases, but we do encourage an open dialogue with all cases. So if that is the case and you find that you may not be able to meet the deadline for any specific reason, as Danny said, please do let us know as soon as possible. So I'll hand back over to Danny.
Thank you very much, everyone. That was, really, really helpful. And I think we have got plenty of time, so we can start to pick up some questions that we've had through the chat. I don't know if we want to, Polly, if you want to read them out so everybody's aware, and then we can go through them, and we'll get to all the ones we can, and then revisit any afterwards that we don't get a chance to answer.
Okie dokie. I'll start with I'll go from top down because we've had lots of questions come in, which is great. So our first question is, if we have a document that covers multiple points, how would you prefer we label that?
Yeah, really good question. And I think I'd like to bring Kayla in here, because this is very much your area of work, isn't it? So if you could describe what works most effectively for your team, that'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. So as we said previously, our checklist form is really great here, because you can literally just put in the title of the document in file location, and we'll know that we can look at that document to find that point. So in terms of that aspect, if you can just put it in the checklist form, that would be brilliant. When providing evidence, though, please make sure to only provide the file once. We don't need it multiple times. There are sometimes situations where we receive things in zip folders, and it's great that they're all labeled, but sometimes we have the exact same information twice. So just be sure to add it once in that file and in the information that you provide, and then just list it on our checklist so that we know that that's what we need to be referring to. I hope that answers the question.
So the next question we've got, it's similar. It says, so if you've got a specific narrative to support a document which provides greater clarity and context and background detail on the case, how do we outline this for the relevant points?
I think so. I'm assuming from that question we're talking about providing just sort of a bit more detail. If you have, let's pick on repairs, for example. If you were providing us with a copy of a contractor report and you wanted to give us a bit more information about that, you could write some details down and include it within that contractor report file and reference it on the checklist. That would be fine. I mean, with our it's important to say that we always base our decisions on the facts of the case. It's very much about what the information tells us rather than sort of anybody's interpretation of it. But if you have some information that you feel is relevant, absolutely just provide it and link it into whichever bit of information we've requested that you feel it's relevant to. Would that be your understanding? Again, Kayla, to bring you in because of it's very much linked to your area of work. Would that be your understanding and what would work best for your team?
Absolutely. I completely agree with what you've just said.
Brilliant. Thank you. And sorry, Polly, back to
I was going to say, the next question is it's a bit of a technical one, actually. It says, so if we supply emails as PDFs, what does this mean for attachments within emails?
So if you provide emails as PDFs, you can what we'd need you to do is you've got the email, it's got attachments, save the attachments and save the email and provide that within whichever section is relevant. So that's what we'd expect in that circumstance, because if as I said, a problem with emails being submitted directly is sometimes that they can, through nobody's fault, default to that single line formatting, which is a problem, and it's challenging to sort of and time consuming to work around and resolve, and we're not always able to do it. So that does sort of encourage a bit of back and forth between us and the landlord about getting that situation resolved. Whereas as if we have the email as the PDF and the relevant attachments saved separately too, it takes away that sort of it takes away any ambiguity and queries there. And I'll pick up, I can see there's a second part to this question as well, which is about when will all landlords have access to the portal? So I can't give you a definite, this is when a definite timescale for when all landlords will have access to it. But again, within our business plan for this year, what we've done is we've looked at landlords who have a higher case volume with us when it comes to cases that go to dispute resolution, and also landlords who have a higher number of properties. So we have that group of landlords that we're going to be inviting this year, and don't quote me exactly, but I think we're around 170. And those landlords will be receiving an email next week to let them know that we're going to be inviting you shortly. And then the onboarding process will happen after that, and we'll sort of let the landlords know individually what details we need. So that's, yeah, something. I saw another question a bit further down, and I think it's quite timely to pick it up as well. Just to be crystal clear, if you are not a portal user and you haven't been onboarded and you don't have a log on, you will not be able to use the portal system to share information with us. When it's your turn to be added to the system, you will receive an email directly from us, which will have onboarding information like I've described, and it will let you know what we need to get you on the system. And once you're on it, you will know you're on it, because all communication will come via that, apart from the odd cases which I can see people are flagging that we aim to pick up. So I hope that helps and answers those two questions there.
Okay. Thanks, Danny. So next question we've got is quite a long question. So what do we do when we have a case that has sensitive information? So, for example, the police state that it says do not share with another agency. Are we expected to provide this to the Ombudsman, even though the police have stated not to share, but the information is key to the case at hand?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think what we'd advise a landlord to do in the first instance, because at the point that you have that sensitive information from the police, you are the data controller there. That would be something you'd need to discuss with your data protection team initially and get some advice on it from a GDPR perspective. We are sort of, obviously, we've got our legislation associated with the Ombudsman and our scheme, and we are entitled to sensitive pieces of information, but we would always advise a landlord to check specifically with their own team about whether they feel comfortable sharing the data. And if it turned out there was a sort of disagreement there and your teams didn't feel comfortable, we felt we needed it, then that will be discussed as part of the individual case assessment. And I think we've covered the next question, because again, there was a second part to this one, which was about being invited to the portal and submitting data to it. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, Polly, if you want
we'll skip over that, because I think we've pretty much answered that. So the next sort of batch of questions around service level agreements. So somebody's asked, what are your service level agreements responding to inquiries? But also someone else has asked, if you're requesting an extension for evidence requests, the deadline we were asked to wait is 15 working days to expect a response from that Ombudsman. How do you advise we manage this if the extension agreement is needed before the 15 working day response? And quite a few people have said yes. Can you let us know? I've had a few thumbs up to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if I understand, just to make sure I understand the scenario correctly, you've received an evidence request as a landlord, and you, let's just say during week 2, request an extension, and then we have our 15 working day SLA, which is essentially another 3 weeks before you would hear from us to say yay or nay, and obviously the time has passed. If that's sort of what I understand from that question, and that's what I'll be answering. I think that we are, as Sarah mentioned in one of the answers to the pre-submitted questions, we have increased our resource, and we are increasing our capacity to sort of pick up those inquiries within our SLA timescale, which, as you've mentioned, is within 15 working days. But our process is, as outlined on that slide and is outlined on our escalation process on our website, it is the 3 weeks, the chase, the 1 week, the chase, the 1 week, the chase, and the CHFO after that. So what we would say is, if you request an extension at week 2 and you don't hear from us in that time, assume that you've got sort of the standard timeline outlined in that escalation process, but we are going to be able to come back to you a lot sooner on evidence extensions than we have before. So you will see sort of more timely communication around those where you have requested extensions during the period. And if we do have a delay in us coming back to you and you provided a very genuine reason about why you're not able to comply with that request, I know in the past we've had landlords that have experienced really significant issues that have affected their organisations, like cyber attacks, for example. Things like that we will absolutely take into account, even if we are a little bit delayed in getting back to you on to confirm our response there. So as long as you've given us the information as soon as you can about the reason you need an extension, that's the key point for yourselves, and we'll always get back to you once we've had time to review it.
Okay, thanks, Danny. The next question is specific for Onward Home. So what I suggest is that we'll contact the colleagues at Onward to answer that question for you. So moving down, so Paradigm Housing Group. So they've said if all the information requested is expected to be uploaded to the portal and in folders, how is this possible as you cannot upload folders onto the portal? Because of this, we continue to share information via SharePoint and upload this email to the portal.
Yeah, so we don't need folders on the portal. We need files on the portal. So you can upload a number of files all together. And I think this is the sort of activity that the micro-learning tool that we're going to develop around the portal will be really helpful with, because you can upload, like I said, a number of files, and the file size limit is exactly the same as our email per individual file. But the difference with the portal is that you wouldn't have to, if you think about, so I'm going around this answer a little bit, but if we think about how things work, if you email us documents, we might need several bits of information that equate to sort of quite a large submission in terms of megabytes, and you would have to break that up over several emails, like people have mentioned within the chat. And what you can do with the portal is each individual file can be no more than 20 megabytes, but you can upload as many files as you want. And we absolutely do not need folders. It's the files that need to be labelled and uploaded. So I hope that answers your question. But again, if there's anything sort of portal specific, if this is generating any portal specific queries for any users, just email the box and we can engage with you individually if you need any support around specific issues.
That's lovely. So Claire has said that you mentioned that you've increased your workforce due to demand. We've not been able to increase our workforce with the same speed, and so there's an increase in demand on our service. Could this be taken into account if we request an extension?
Yeah, again, it's a very valid point, and I do want to, obviously we have our timescales and we have our and there's reasons for that. That's what we work to, those timescales, to make sure that we're able to deliver those timely determinations for individuals. But we are absolutely alive to the pressures in the sector at the moment. We're fully aware of the conditions that landlords are operating in. However, we have had these timescales in place for quite some time, and these are the timescales that we do expect landlords to adhere to as part of their engagement with the Ombudsman service. That said, we are looking at sort of the sort of overall picture in the sector, considering our case volumes, because we know that in the crudest sense, that the more efficient we are in processing our cases, the more impact it has on yourselves as landlords. So we are absolutely aware of all that. We are taking it into account as sort of a broader consideration around whether we need to make any tweaks to our process. But for individual cases at the moment, we will take the details of that specific extension request into account. So it's very much, our timescales are as I've described, but please do communicate with us if there is anything affecting yourselves as a landlord, and we will definitely take that into consideration for that particular case.
Okay. Thanks, Danny. There's a couple of questions now which are about uploading information, but I think, Danny, you've just said that if you've got specific query about your organisation, to email directly. So I'll skip over those. So the next question we've got is, it would be great if you could see the reasons why you close a case that hasn't been a file request. Just be good to understand why you've not taken the case further, so we can help highlight some good practice within our teams. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think because if we're looking at the moment again about the information we have available on our website about sort of a bit more around the ins and outs of our process to give clarity to landlords and residents as well, sort of about what they can expect from our different teams. So if we're thinking about a case that is at our stage, the triage and casework assessment stage, you should always know why that case has been closed, because you should receive either an outside jurisdiction decision letter, you'll receive an evidence request, and it'll be, or perhaps a mediation request. So one of those three things will happen, and you'll be aware as to what's happened with that case. And obviously, when cases progress to our formal arena in dispute resolution for that formal decision and determination, again, you would always be able to see why it's been closed, because at that point, it would either be a withdrawal by the resident, which we'd explored and considered appropriate. It would be the outcome, the determination on the case, then the investigation report, or there could be information at that stage which we didn't have available, which has meant the case has then become and been decided that it's actually outside our jurisdiction there. Thinking about where this query might have come from, you might be talking around cases that are in dispute support, which is where we offer support to residents who have a complaint with yourselves as landlords. And at that point, it depends on the status of the case as to when the resident comes to us, as to what intervention we have. A resident might come to us and just ask for support in making a complaint with their landlord, and they do that and they get their response, and we never hear from them. They're happy, and that case would just be sort of opened and closed with a bit of contact to yourselves. So it'd be really helpful if this landlord has any specifics that they wanted to query and sort of understand a bit more about those particular cases. If you want to pop an email through to the portal mailbox, we can have a look at the details, and then we can sort of support you in looking at that good practice if it's available from those cases that you're describing.
Thanks, Danny. We've got a question from Yorkshire Housing. So when submitting evidence, we like to ensure that everything's in chronological order. Therefore, are we okay to continue submitting evidence packs via the PDF format, or do we need to provide each piece of evidence separately rather than compacting it all into one document?
Kayla, do you want to come in here? Because this is very much again your area of work, and it'd be good to hear from you on this one.
Yeah, so you can submit it as sort of like a catch-all PDF, and that is great. But the sorts of things that we look for are things like the tenancy agreement or the stage 2 response, and those are the things that we pick out of those PDFs. So if you could put those in separate PDFs on their own, and then the rest of the evidence compile into one, that's absolutely fine. But as a catch-all, yes, it's fine, but actually it would be a lot easier for us, and we probably won't come back to you if you're able to separate out the stage 2 response and also the tenancy agreement, just so that we can see it straight away. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and I think coming back to our original sort of, what I communicated in the presentation about our reasons for this, if we have sort of a bigger PDF file, some of the case files that we explore, as you'll be very aware, can be quite significant and quite large. So if you submit one large PDF for, let's just say, 10 points of evidence that we've requested, and it's 1,000 pages, we might not be able to tell that everything is in there if you're just saying it's in file number 3. So if you do that, what would be helpful is to just pop some either some section references that you've put in your PDF, or some page reference numbers, just to say the contractor report is pages 20 to 28. Let me think of something else to do with repairs. The full repairs history is page 29 to 50, that sort of thing. So it's up to you. If you provide the separate files like we've requested that have our referencing point attached, then that's very easy for us to determine we've got everything we need. If you want to provide one for the majority of the bits like Kayla described, we do again need you just to tell us what's there to make sure that we're not missing anything and it doesn't cause further delays when the case progresses to dispute resolution.
Thanks, Danny. There's a few questions that aren't sort of portal related or evidence related, so I'll move on past those ones. We do have some questions about, or they're more like comments. So we've got a comment here that says, when we have submitted evidence via email, we've been contacted 3 months later asking for the evidence to be resent as the link has expired. This feels like a long time. And also, generally, when we ask for an extension, we don't receive a reply from the Ombudsman to confirm whether the request has been accepted or not.
Yeah, so I'll start with the second point there, because I think I've covered that earlier in the discussion around sort of the fact that we're increasing in resource there, and we are going to be able to meet those timescales around coming back to you. But if in doubt, you follow that process that we've described, our escalation process. I think the thing that I can see Lindsay's highlighted in the chat around the links for evidence, that is exactly one of the reasons why we wanted to have a system like the portal. We work with yourselves and obviously a large number of other landlords as well who have different CRMs, different ways of storing information, and the portal allows landlords to submit it to us without all this the confusion that can come from links. So we don't, in the main, we do not want links. Share file links, I appreciate they are convenient. However, they're not necessarily the most accessible way to provide information to us. And there can also be discrepancies about what information is in a share file pot on Monday versus what information is there on Wednesday. So for our purposes, we want the files. And if you are a portal user, upload them to the portal. If you're an email, if you communicate with us by email, attach them to emails. And we do appreciate that sometimes because of the file sizes, it's sending multiple ones. But when we do have more landlords on the portal, that will, absolutely resolve that issue for you.
Okay, thank you. We've got a few more questions that I think you've already really answered. So I'll move down to one that I know that haven't answered yet. So we feel that in some cases it would be really helpful to talk through the evidence, the Housing Ombudsman and the landlord. Is this something you've considered?
Yeah, our adjudicators, if they have any, to go back a little bit actually, we are very much based on the information and the facts of the case as we see it. We have that inquisitorial approach that I've mentioned, so it's always going to be based on the evidence and information that we can assess and we can look at as part of that investigation. However, if you feel that you need to discuss the case with an adjudicator or investigator, that's absolutely fine. That can happen, but ultimately the decision is always going to be based on the sort of tangible elements of evidence that we can assess as part of our investigation. But yeah, absolutely, more than happy. Adjudicators and investigators are more than happy to discuss cases with landlords. Just email or send them a portal message if it's a portal case. Yeah, more than happy to do that.
Okay. So this is, I'm going to read the question out, but I don't entirely understand it. So you might, Danny. So if the level of service charges and rent increases is not within the jurisdiction of HOS to review, why are you asking for copies of invoices, accounts, legal information that we rely on to calculate our charges? This is not related to the complaint handling, which is what you have advised are able to investigate.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because this area can cause quite a lot of confusion for people generally, because you're quite right. There are elements of service charges and rent increases, increases specifically, that are very much outside of our jurisdiction, and that's explained in our scheme, and it's explained sort of further in our it was one of our insight reports we did specifically on service charges. However, there are elements of service charge management and administration that we can look at. So while you're absolutely right, we wouldn't be able to give a determination on whether the increase was reasonable. That's definitely not our remit. However, we can look at all the administration, the communication, the management, and part of that means that we need to be able to see the background to how decisions have been arrived at. And I will pop a link over, actually, if I can get to it during the webinar, and if not, we can share it after. Our spotlight report or insight report, I can't quite remember which one it was, that we did on service charges is fantastically insightful about explaining the line between what we do as a service and what other organisations, for example, the First Tier Tribunal, pick up. So yeah, it's a really good question. There is always a bit of a grey area, but increases are out, but administration and supporting information about getting to the point of increase can be in. But our service charge report explains a lot more. Thanks, Danny. Someone has asked, how are the messages on the portal monitored? So is it by the assessor or the adjudicator, or in whose case it is? Sometimes the responses are quick and sometimes the responses are non-existent and can be quite frustrating. No, I can imagine. So the messages on the portal, if the case is assigned to a specific individual, they get an alert via our casework management system to say you have the message, and then they should get back to you. Thinking about when people are on annual leave or away from the business for any unexpected reason, there is management oversight of their cases via that system. So it may be that there might be a delay if the absence was unforeseen. It might be that there's a delay in somebody getting back to you, but it would absolutely always be picked up by a member of the wider team. So I hope that answers your question there. Okay. Is there a reason why recently the Housing Ombudsman is sending 3 to 4 evidence requests per day? This means the landlord has a huge area of work to complete on the return due date. Is this because you're working through your backlog? And if so, should it slow down soon? We look at cases based on how long the case has been. We do consider other factors as well, like, for example, the risk profile of the case, but ultimately we're looking at cases in terms of when they were referred to us as duly made. When we decide they're duly made, which means that we've had a copy of that response from the resident and we've assessed the case and seen that it's within our jurisdiction. So at that point, we get that letter from the resident to say, I've completed landlord's complaints procedure, I'm not happy, I want you to investigate. That's our marker for when we start to look at when the order in which we assess cases. So it just may be that as a landlord, you've had a sort of batch of cases that have popped up at a similar time. We're not sort of looking at the moment, we're not looking at sending sort of batching up landlords' requests and sending them all together or anything like that. It will just be sort of timing of the case and as to when it's come to us on our reports to look through. We are, obviously, as part of this process, we are looking at cases more efficiently, and we are looking at cases which means we can process cases more quickly. So you may see an increase in what's coming through from us. I can't say whether it will slow down. The demand is sort of, as we're all aware on this webinar, the demand is continuing to increase. There's all sorts going on in the housing sector. So I can't say that it will slow down, but we, again, just keep talking with us if you've got any concerns specifically for your organisation, and we can consider the details. So more of a specific question about what something means when it comes up on the portal. So someone said, hi, we've had a message on the portal stating that the status is within the landlord's internal complaints procedure. Do we need to wait for further instructions? Absolutely. So the message you've got when we set the status of the case for visibility on the portal, that's the emails we described earlier where we said we're going to turn them off and we're going to stop you receiving them because it's telling you we updated the status, but you don't need to do anything with it. that's exactly that email that you've described there. We will be removing those. We will be turning those off in the not too distant future. So yeah, absolutely. You will always receive a message from us if there's something for you to do on that case. And you should receive a task as well. So you get the message, and the message will be like our usual correspondence. It will come to you via the portal, but there'll be an attachment which will be one of our usual letters. If it's within the landlord's complaints procedure, if the case is within the landlord's complaints procedure, it could be asking you to escalate the complaint, could be asking you to record a complaint. It will be just like our normal correspondence that we send at dispute support, but via the portal. But absolutely, you will get a message to tell you, you get an email to tell you there's a portal message, and you will get a task. You don't need to do anything if you just have a case status update email from the portal.
Great. We've had a few questions around this in terms of mediation, but so quite a few people have asked how many of the cases that you see go down the mediation route rather than a full investigation. Don't know if you'll have those figures off the top of your head.
No, I don't have those figures. But when it comes to looking at the case and identifying whether it's appropriate, I think if I could bring in Hannah or Sarah just to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's completely case by case. So sometimes in sort of a batch of our caseload, there might be quite a few that are appropriate for mediation. Sometimes there might be weeks and weeks where none that we look at are appropriate. So a lot of that is based on a conversation with the resident and what they are hoping for as an outcome to the complaint. So if, for example, it's a repairs complaint and all the repairs are completed now and they are looking for maybe a higher compensation figure that's not too far from what's been offered in the stage 2 response, then we might consider mediation. Sometimes residents want us to investigate. They don't want to try mediation because they want us to look into, to all the circumstances of the complaint. So it's really difficult to say because it all just depends on what's already happened, how long ago the stage 2 response was issued, and what's happened in the meantime, and what ultimately what the resident is seeking. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I'm just trying to look through. Is there anything else? Somebody has asked, does asking for an extension reflect badly on us as a landlord or affect our relationship with the Ombudsman Service?
It doesn't reflect badly on you as an organisation at all. We appreciate the engagement and the information that we hear from you as quickly as possible. There isn't any sort of poor outcomes related to asking for extensions if you need them. However, like Kayla described, we will look at them and consider them on a case-by-case basis, and obviously taking into account the circumstances of the organisation as you've made us aware of them. What does impact is the complaint handling failure order. Now, we report on those quarterly, and we also share that detail with the regulator of social housing. So if it did end up in you receiving a complaint handling failure order, that's where the sort of I don't want to say negative reflection, but that's where we might think this landlord might need a little bit more support, and information like that does support how we look at our more systemic work in our insight and development team as well. But sort of in the main, asking for an extension, we think it's reasonable, it's granted, it's not going to unduly delay the case. That has no reflection on your service.
Okay, I can see that Anthony's put that insight report into the chat for anybody who wants to have a look at that. Just seeing if there's anything else, because we've only got 3 minutes left. Do you share details of case outcomes with the regulator or just the complaint handling failure orders?
We share obviously all our determinations are public. All our determinations that we make at dispute resolution are public, and they're published on our website unless we think there's a reason not to do that based on the case. And we don't share the details of individual cases with the regulator, but similar to the work that goes on around our more systemic work, if we see a picture of a particular increase around severe maladministrations and the sort of information that our casework overall is telling us about the landlord, then we may have cause to engage with the regulator, but it would be more on a sort of broad level than an individual case-by-case basis, apart from the communication about the CHFOs.
Brilliant. Thanks, Danny. There are quite a few other questions in there, but we'll go through them and respond to those in the feedback we send out to you. Anthea, have you got a code to put up so people could give some feedback? So yeah, Anthea's just put up a QR code for everybody. If be really helpful if you could respond to that, because it helps us understand what's working for you and what's not, and then we can put on better resources for landlords.
And thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. It's been I feel it's been a really useful discussion, and I hope you do as well. It's been brilliant to get all these questions through, and like Anthea and Polly says, absolutely, we'll pick all the other ones up that we didn't get to answer and come back to you. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Okay. Thanks ever so much, everybody, and look forward to hearing from you again soon. Okay, bye-bye then.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.